Hi everyone, this will be the last video for me. Just a few things I wanted to talk about. I know during the final testing weekend, there's a lot going on, so there's always not a good time for us to kind of discuss all the uh, details of things. What you need to do after you finish the class. So you just finished your EMT class, you passed the written test, you passed the skills test for the class. That skills test also counted for your National Registry Skills certification. So all you have left to do to get your National Registry certification is take that National Registry cognitive exam. You need to get that scheduled as soon as possible. I recommend taking it within 2 weeks of the class finishing, within a month at the longest amount of time. Basically, when you look at the scores nationally from all EMT classes, the pass rate on that National Registry exam really starts to drop off after 1 month. So get that scheduled. Even if you didn't do so hot on the final exam and you were kind of borderline and you needed some more time to study, go ahead and schedule it for 1 month from now so you have that date on the calendar and you can set goals and start studying for that. To schedule that NREMT exam, you're going to go back to nremt.org where you created an account earlier. You'll see that I've signed you off for your skills and passing the course. And if you've already paid for the exam, you'll now see that you have authorization to test. You'll click on application status. And if you haven't paid, that's where you'll pay. And if you have already paid, you'll see that you have authorization to test. And they'll even email you a letter that's your authorization to test letter. You schedule the whole exam through them. You can do the exam online and they'll watch you through your webcam, or you can go to the testing center and take it there. There is a testing center here in Missoula on the university campus, but really anywhere where they do, it's called a Pearson VUE testing center. So anywhere where people do like SAT or ACT testing in your area, they should have one. They are all located all over the world in bigger cities. So you can find one of those. If you take it online, I've heard mixed reviews. Some students loved it, some hated it. So I think you'll get a more consistent experience at a testing center. No matter where you take it, you're going to get the same type of questions. The test is the same. It's just a matter of the check-in and all that kind of thing. So I know the software requirements can be kind of tricky and things like that. So personally, I recommend the testing center. But if you're in a remote area and you don't have that option, doing the test online is also a great idea. It works. It works. It's just some students love it and some don't. So just that's kind of my 2 cents about that. This is all scheduled no matter which way you want to do it, in person or over through your webcam. It's all scheduled through the NREMT website. If you have any problems with scheduling it or anything, I'm sorry, it's nothing I can really help you with. It's all through them. So just go straight through that website. And if you have any questions, you'll have to contact the NREMT. To study for that national registry, same things I suggested for studying for the final exam. And, just again, Pocket Prep is going to be huge. There are other apps out there if you want one that's, free or cheaper. But I will say when students have found free apps, they would bring questions to me that we kind of decided, oh, that's kind of the wrong answer, or that's an outdated question, things like that. Whereas Pocket Prep seems to really stay on top of things. So that's going to be the one that I recommend first and foremost, is that Pocket Prep app. Once you get your National Registry certification, if you plan to work or volunteer as an EMT in any capacity in any state, you also need a state license. That licensing process is going to be slightly different in every state. When you pass your National Registry, I'll send you an email with instructions on how to get a state license in Montana. But if you're in another state, Google the state name and then the state name and then EMT license. So for example, in Montana, you would Google Montana EMT license, or Oregon EMT license, or Washington EMT license. And then on the Google results, just make sure you're clicking on a .gov website. It'll usually be like the state and then .gov, and then there'll be something about EMS or healthcare somewhere in that link as well. So get that state license. You need that before you can volunteer or work as an EMT. Sometimes students ask me if they can put me down as a reference on a job application, and I'm happy to do that for the next month or two if you just finish the course. But once we get a month or two out, it's really hard for me to give good, much information about you as a job candidate. So if you're coming back and helping with class all the time as a helper, we'll talk more about that in a second. If you're coming in and helping with class all the time, I can give a better recommendation, and I'm happy to do that, in the future. But if you just took the EMT class and I haven't seen you since, again, I'm happy to give a recommendation be a reference for a job for a month or two. But after that, it's really hard for me to remember, what you were like, especially if you were here in the online class and I only spent about a week with you. It's really hard for me to give feedback about how do they work with others and things like that. So I would rather you not use me as a reference after a couple months. But the first couple months is fine. Just let me know that you put me down so I can be expecting the call. So we're continuing education. So now that you've done all the work and you have your National Registry certification, you want to keep it current. If you let your national registry lapse, the only way to get it back is to retake an entire EMT class. I think there's a 5-year window or something where you can take a refresher and retake the test, but that's going to be really challenging. So most people, if they let it lapse, they end up just having to take the entire class over again. As much as I love you guys, I don't want you to have to do that. It would be fun to spend another 9 weeks together, but let's not get to that situation. So let's look at, it's not too early to start thinking about it. Let's start looking at what you actually need to keep your national registry current. So I have a list here of the requirements. So your NREMT is going to expire March 31st every 2 years. You'll also have an expiration date for your state license. That's going to vary state to state and when you applied and all that. So make sure you're also checking your state license and when it expires and what those requirements are, because they could be different. In the state of Montana, the National Registry and the state license have the same requirements. The requirement to renew your state license is just you need a current NREMT card, and that makes it really simple. But check your state because they could have different requirements. So every 2 years, what do you need? You need a total of 40 hours of continuing education. 20 of those hours are considered the national component, and they have to cover these specific hours that you see listed here. 6 hours of medical, 1.5 hours of airway, respiration, ventilation, 1.5 hours of trauma, 5 hours of EMS operations, and 6 hours of cardiovascular. When you renew your BLS CPR card, that's going to count for 4 of those 6 cardiovascular hours. So that'll knock out 4 of the 20. And then you need an additional 10 hours local, state, and 10 hours individual. Most of the time, these additional 20 hours can be anything you want them to cover. But if your specific department that you work in or the state you're in, if they want to require specific topics for those 10 local state hours, they can. So check on that with your local department. But for the most part, you need 20 hours covering these 5 topics and then an additional 20 hours. Now, where can you get those hours? Well, if you live here local to Missoula and you want to help out with future EMT classes, for me, you're more than welcome to do that. Every time you come in and help with class, you all notice there were helpers here throughout the class. They're getting continuing education hours. It's hour for hour. If you help for 2 hours, you get 2 hours of continuing education. If you help for 3, you get 3 hours of continuing education. In addition to that, they also get a $5. You would also get a $5 coupon from me that you can use towards continuing education classes that I offer. If you live in a different area, you could check and see if there are EMT classes in your area that might want volunteers for a similar kind of continuing education opportunity. Other than that, you can check with hospitals, and then EMS services and places like that. If you work somewhere, they'll usually offer those continuing education opportunities through your on-the-job kind of yearly training and stuff like that. But if you're not working somewhere or you're doing something like wildland fire where you're the only EMT on the crew, they won't necessarily give you those opportunities. So you might have to go out and seek them out at, like I said, hospitals. You can look online and see if there are a lot of online opportunities for continuing education, and you can do as many hours online as you want. So I actually offer online continuing education courses as well. They're right on my website. You just sign up for them on there, and you can complete the 20-hour national component right on my website. Or if you've already done your 20-hour national component, you can do the ones on my website to fulfill the additional 20 hours or however many hours you need. They're broken down by those national component requirements. As you earn your continuing education hours, make sure you keep track. Make sure that when you're doing those hours, you get some kind of certificate or some kind of piece of paper that says the date that you completed it, what topics were covered, who who offered the continuing education, such as like fight or flight emergency medical educators or such and such hospital or such and such ambulance service or fire department or whoever offered that service, what you covered, how many hours, and that it has a signature and a phone number that they can contact the person who was in charge of the training. And then keep those pieces of paper. If you ever get audited, they'll have to see those to prove that you actually did the hours from National Registry. I suggest that as you get those pieces of paper, you just go ahead and immediately upload those to National Registry so that you'll have them. On my website under EMT recertification, you'll see I have a video embedded that explains exactly how to upload those hours on NREMT. So as soon as you start earning your hours, I would just upload them as you go. That way you don't have to worry about losing your piece of paper. You can even upload a picture of your certificate or a piece of paper proving that you did your hours. And that way you'll have it. If you get audited, that you won't have to do anything. It'll just already be there. So just to recap, get your National Registry test taken as soon as you possibly can. Get your state license right after you pass your National Registry, and then start working on those continuing education hours so I don't have to see you again in 2 years when your EMT lapses. I hope you all have a good month ahead getting ready for that national registry and passing. I really look forward to this next 2 weeks after our class finishes. It's like Christmas every day. I wake up and check the national registry to see who passed the exam today. So go sign up. I know you'll do well, and let me know if you have any questions or problems, and I hope to see you all around. Thank you. Bye.